Hey, Chris Parker here, back with the Leader Matters podcast, lessons in leadership from Parker Resources. And, we just want to take these 100 lessons and make leadership important. Remember, leadership is hard. The leader still matters. Everybody's looking for this magic program. The magic program's a great leader. So today we're on episode 2, The Leader's Purpose. I'm joined by our good friend, Chris Wallace, the principal at Pickens High School. Chris, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to diving into this episode. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So for today, it's real simple. You got purpose and you got goals, and everybody understands purpose and goals. And those are words that get thrown out a lot in leadership. But I think it was important to say the purpose has to be more important than the goal. The goal is what you're trying to get to, and that's important. And we're going to talk about goals several times during these 100 episodes. But the purpose should never waver. You may achieve your goal, but are you still working on your purpose? Your purpose is so much more deeper than that. So everybody has their personal purpose, like what's your why? Why are you doing this? We're not really talking about that today. Of course, it does intermingle some, but we're talking about what is a leader in general's purpose as a leader. And I came up with 4 things, and the first is to set the example. Set the example for work, for organization, for commitment. If you want people to work hard, you got to work hard. If you want people to be organized, you got to be organized. You want people to be committed, you got to be committed. You want people to care, you got to care. You know what I mean on that, Chris? Like, we got to set the example. If you're the leader of a Pee Wee team or the CEO of Coca-Cola, you have to set the example for how things are supposed to go.
Absolutely. And I think that what I try to do is just walk the walk. I mean, talk is cheap, and there's so much stuff out there that people hear and all these acronyms and cliches that people throw out, but people want to see. And when the way you show that is, set the expectation and the example for what you want your people to represent your organization as, and then you live it out and you show them, and you can take opportunities to show them. And the only way that you can do that consistently is to believe in it yourself. So I think that's a big part of it is to believe in the example, so that you set the example automatically. If you have to pretend or act it out and try to be something you're not, then that's going to be really tough. So I just think believe in it yourself. You got to buy it yourself before you can sell it to anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, the second step I would say is set the vision. And we're going to hear this several times if you listen to all these about vision, methods, and assessment. But you've got to set the vision. You've got to explain to your people what you want it to look like. It's unbelievable to me how many times as a coach, people would say things like, well, nobody ever asked us to help. We would be glad to help, but nobody ever asked us. Or we'll be glad to do this for you, but we don't know what you want. Sometimes that's a cop-out, guys. Sometimes they're just saying that because they don't want to do anything. But sometimes it's true. You have to explain to them what you want. If you're a head coach, you got 2 assistant coaches, you got to tell them assistant coaches what you want them to do. That sounds real simple, but a lot of people miss it. And if you're over a company, if you're over a business, if you're the principal of a school, you have to tell people how you want it to look like. You have to set the vision. And I guess before you can set the vision, you have to see it in your head. You got to create a vision for what you want something to look like. And I would say this sounds really cliche and good in theory, but I'm talking about small things. If I'm talking to the principal of high school right now, I'm talking to, and I say his job is to set the vision for the entire high school. Well, that's pretty broad, but that is his job. But your job is also to set the vision for the fine arts program, for the athletic department, for the English department, for how we're going to conduct before school, how we're going to conduct testing in the building. You know what I mean? You need a vision for just those things. If I said, what's testing supposed to look like at your school? You should be able to tell me what it's supposed to look like. That doesn't always look like that. But in a perfect world, what is the vision supposed to look like for all these little things? And those little things become the vision for the whole operation.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, what I've tried to do is, and this is an area that I have to constantly work on, because you have to trust to be able to have people do this, but you have to have confidence, faith, and belief in your people over those parts and pieces. You've got to, plain talk's easily understood. Tell them what you need, and then inspect what you expect. Okay. and go back and revisit it. And if you need to tweak it or ask them to adjust it, then don't be afraid to have the relationships built where you can have those conversations and not being critical, but say, hey, have we thought about this, or have you considered this? Let's maybe put this in place. I've seen this work before. So you got to have the people to help you carry out your vision, or to set the vision that you have forward in each of those areas, because there are so many different areas. If you try to manage all of them, you'll just wear yourself out and wear yourself thin, and you'll get burned out really quick. And in a setting like where I'm at, there's so many different parts and pieces. You got to depend on good people around you.
So if step one is to set a vision, meaning, okay, I've set the example, but I'm working hard. I'm at least trying hard. I think that's the first thing. If you're not doing that, I don't know what else we can teach you. But then you start coming up with a vision. This is what I would like this to look like. So if I was a football coach, I want to say, this is how I want practice to look like. Well, then the next question would be like, well, how are we going to actually practice that way? Because that sounds good in theory. So the next step would be setting methods to attain the vision. You understand what I mean? So what are the procedures? So you want testing to look a certain way at your school? Okay, that sounds good. That sounded really good when you told us how it was going to go. Now, how are we going to actually do it? Well, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to talk about this, and then these people are going to check on these, and et cetera. So if I'm coaching and we're saying, well, we want our, team to be seen in the community. Well, that sounds really good. That's great. That's a great vision. Well, what are we doing? Okay, well, in every October, we're going to take up canned goods, and every March, we're going to, go to a community project in the city. We're going to work with city government. Give some methods. Tell me how we're going to get to that vision. And that sometimes, I shouldn't say sometimes, oftentimes when people struggle, that is where they get caught. They're working hard. They set the example. They want to do right. They have good ideas. They know what they want it to look like, but they don't know how to actually practically get there.
I think one way that I've tried to do this, or try to carry this out, is, if I see a school that's really doing well in an area, it's okay to talk to people, and call people and say, hey, I understand y'all are doing this and killing it. Tell me how you got there. What was the process? And sometimes you find out it's a very simple process. It's something simple they'll share with you. Usually people are flattered when you ask them, so nobody tries to hoard it up to themselves. So find something that somebody else is doing well, and then, don't just copy it, but make it fit to your needs. I think oftentimes we're hesitant to go out there and ask, or we're hesitant to go out there and look and see what's out there. But I love to admire what other people are doing well, and then see what parts and pieces we can do to apply it to our methods to attain our vision, because everybody's vision is going to look different. If you put 100 people in the school to be a principal, they're going to have a different vision. But you're the principal at this moment, or you're the leader in your organization. How are you going to attain it? And that comes by setting all these things we talked about before, with the relationships, and having people that believe in you, and having good people on board that are going to go carry it out as well, but also entrusting them to do that. And that the method part is where a lot of people get hung up, and me admittingly so. I've gotten hung up on that before. And it's the theory versus practice. Some things feel and sound and look really good in theory, and in practice is where it breaks down. So that's a great part right there. It's a huge part of this.
Yeah. So you set the vision, you come up with a plan on how to actually attain that vision, how to get there. And then the last thing is a piece that the rest of the people that struggle mess up with: setting measures in place to assess it. I mean, you got to assess, you got to know, reflect and evaluate. Is this working? Can we do better? So you have a vision, and your vision may be, I use football terms for this one. We decided we want to run the ball. We're going to be a physical football team. That's my vision. I see us running the ball up and down the field on people. Okay, well, how are we going to get there? Well, we're going to practice 85% of the time on the run game. We're on counter and buck sweep and all this. But if you get in that game and you're not moving the football, something's not working in those methods. You got to go back to step two, kind of. You got to know, how are we going to assess? So in football, we would say, we want a certain number of plays to be efficient. Did they get what we wanted? Yes or no? And if a certain number of them were no's, then we're going to go back to the methods and reevaluate how we did practice. The same could be said for a principal, a CEO, or anybody. If something's not working, you got to have a plan in place for how are we going to decide if this is working or not, and then what are we going to do if it's not working. And so self-evaluation, team evaluation, reflection, this can be really difficult and a topic that's not really, a lot of people don't really want to talk about for whatever reason, but it's really one of the key components to success.
Absolutely. And I think that you got to be able to be honest with yourself and honest with your teammates. And I mean, your people that are helping you lead there as you, measure and evaluate and reflect. And that's a big part of it. I don't think the reflection is probably what gets left out a lot because leaders don't have a lot of extra time, but you got to make time to reflect upon it. And the best piece of advice I can give on this real quickly is just to say, just because it was your idea, don't try to force the square peg through the round hole. If it doesn't work, scrap it, go to something else.
That's
Be
right.
willing to scrap your idea.
Yeah, don't worry about being, one of the lessons we're going to talk about down the road is not always trying to be right. Sometimes you're trying to win. There's a difference between trying to win and trying to be right. Sometimes
Yes.
they're the same, but a lot of times they aren't. And I like to win. I don't care about being right. So,
Absolutely.
that's something to keep in your mind. And so, set the example, set the vision, set the methods, and set the assessment. If you can, that's the leader's part. That's all you do. You don't get paid more because your job is harder. You get paid more for those things because those are hard. You're not physically doing more work than somebody else. You're having to set the example, set the vision. There's a higher standard for you. That's why you're the leader. And that's the purpose of being a leader. So today's lesson is just talking about that leader's purpose. We're still in the introduction phase of leadership, what we're trying to get to, and we'll get into more specific things in the coming weeks. So visit us at Parker Resources. Got plenty of things to help you out if you're interested, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.